Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. Today, I am not okay. My heart is shattered and my eyes are drowning in tears. I have lost a piece of my soul, my childhood friend, my brother, Benjamin Jacob. He suffered a heart attack and left this world too soon. He moved to New Zealand with his daughter a few years ago, and now I couldn't even say goodbye. I couldn't be there to hold his hand one last time. I couldn't tell him how much he meant to me. The pain of not being there is unbearable. I keep asking myself, did he know how much I loved him? Did he know I cherished every moment we spent together as kids, laughing, dreaming, and growing up side by side? Now all I have left are memories and a deep, aching sorrow, but I refuse to let his soul leave this world without love. Please, my beautiful family, let us pray together for Benjamin Jacob. Heavenly Father, with broken hearts, we lift up the soul of Benjamin Jacob to you. Lord, embrace him in your endless love, grant him peace, and let his spirit shine in your kingdom. Father, I pray for his daughter. Give her the strength to bear this loss, to feel her father's love even beyond this life. And Lord, for all of us who have lost someone dear, mend the wounds in our hearts, remind us that love never dies, and teach us to cherish every moment before it's too late. In your name, we pray. Amen. My beautiful family, please listen to me. If you are holding on to anger, if pride is keeping you from making things right with someone you love, let it go. You don't know if you'll have another chance. Tell them you love them, hold them close, apologize, forgive, because once they are gone, only regret remains. Benjamin, my brother, I love you. You will always live in my heart. Now, my beautiful family, let's move toward today's story. Lightning split Manhattan's storm-blackened sky like silver lace as Mary Virginia guided her motorcycle through rain-slicked streets. The deluge hammered against her helmet with desperate intensity, each drop a silver bullet in the twilight. Her heart thundered in rhythm with the storm, while wind whipped her custom delivery uniform like dark wings against the autumn night. The specialized thermal bag strapped to her back held more than just another premium delivery from Le Petit Jardin. Chef Antoine's urgent call still echoed in her mind, his French accent thicker with emotion than she'd ever heard before. Ma chérie, this is not just food. This is destiny wrapped in parchment paper. Take it to the Aurora's penthouse. Tout de suite, the night holds magic for those brave enough to dance in the storm. Thunder rolled across the city like destiny's drumroll as the Aurora Hotel rose before her, its glass and steel facade piercing the storm clouds like a modern-day castle. Lightning transformed its windows into cascading diamonds, nature's own chandelier against the turbulent sky. The massive marble entrance gleamed wet and ethereal, while brass-framed revolving doors spun slowly as if waiting just for her. The doorman appeared with an umbrella large enough to shelter royalty, his practiced elegance a stark contrast to the wild night. "Miss Virginia," he nodded, recognition warming his voice. Chef Antoine called ahead. "The private elevator awaits." Water cascaded from her protective gear as she stepped into the lobby's warmth, the thermal bag remaining perfectly dry within its multiple layers of temperature-controlled protection. Mary had designed the system herself, understanding that perfection required attention to every detail, a lesson learned from years of elite deliveries that had helped fund her dream of owning her own restaurant. Her reflection caught in the elevator's polished doors, dark curls escaping their constraints, rain-kissed skin glowing under the ambient lighting. Grandmother's voice whispered from memory, "Baby girl, some nights carry magic in them. You'll know them by the way your heart dances before your mind understands why." The elevator purred upward, each floor marking another step toward what felt increasingly like fate. Mary smoothed her delivery uniform, a custom design that balanced professionalism with style. The bag's weight shifted slightly as she removed her riding jacket, revealing the crisp lines of her attire. Lightning flashed again as the elevator opened directly into the penthouse foyer, thunder following so closely it made the crystal chandeliers tremble. Mary's breath caught at the vista before her. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Manhattan's storm-swept skyline, while soft jazz floated through the air like a tender caress. The space spoke of old money and refined taste, but with unexpected touches of warmth, fresh flowers, well-loved books, a chef's apron thrown casually over a leather chair. "I didn't order dinner." The voice came from the shadows near the window, deep, resonant, with an edge of authority softened by genuine curiosity. John Williams stepped into the light, and Mary felt time slow to a gentle waltz. At 35, he carried success like a well-tailored coat, but it was his eyes that held her attention. Steel blue touched with flecks of storm cloud grey, studying her with an intensity that sent warmth spreading through her chest. Lightning illuminated his features in stark relief, strong jaw, elegant hands, shoulders that bore the weight of empire with deceptive ease. His suit jacket lay discarded, crisp white shirt sleeves rolled to reveal strong forearms. Here was a man who knew both boardrooms and kitchens, whose presence filled the space without overwhelming it. "Chef Antoine requested personal delivery," Mary replied, her voice steady despite the flutter in her stomach. "He marked it urgent." John moved closer, his presence filling the space between them with unspoken possibilities. A subtle frown creased his brow as he reached for the sealed envelope attached to the delivery bag. Antoine never sends unexpected deliveries, not without reason. Mary watched as he broke the seal, noting how his fingers trembled slightly. Fatigue, perhaps, or something more concerning. The paper crinkled as he read, his expression darkening like the storm-swept sky outside. "Those manipulative—" The words cut off as he swayed, one hand reaching for the nearest surface to steady himself. Mary moved without thought, closing the distance between them. Her hands found his arms, supporting him with gentle strength. The contact sent electricity arcing through her palms, up her arms, straight to her racing heart. His skin burned fever-hot through the fine cotton of his shirt. "You need to sit," she insisted, guiding him toward the plush sofa. Their eyes met, and the world seemed to hold its breath. No condescension colored his gaze, no wealthy man's dismissal of someone he considered beneath him. Instead, she saw recognition of her competence, her dignity, and something more that made her pulse quicken. "I'm fine," he protested, but allowed her to help him down. His hand covered hers for a moment, warm and strong, despite his obvious distress. "Though I'm beginning to suspect this isn't a routine delivery." Thunder shook the windows as she revealed dishes crafted with exceptional care, each element precisely arranged, each sauce perfectly balanced. This wasn't just dinner, it was salvation disguised as sustenance. John's breathing had grown shallow, a sheen of perspiration visible on his forehead. "Read me the note." Mary picked up the crumpled paper from where it had fallen. "John, they've done it. Board meeting coffee. This will counteract. Trust her. It's signed with just an A." "Poison," John said, his voice tight with anger and pain. They finally made their move. "Tell me," John managed between careful bites of the antidote-laced meal, "how does someone with your obvious intelligence and skill become a delivery expert?" Mary smiled as she monitored his condition. "Because I turned it into more than delivery. I created a premium service that caters to Manhattan's elite. Specialized temperature-controlled equipment, real-time tracking, complete discretion. Every detail designed to protect the reputation of restaurants like Le Petit Jardin." "While saving for your own restaurant?" His insight surprised her. "You see more than most." She refreshed his water. "Even while being poisoned." A flash of pain crossed his features, but his eyes never left hers. "I've learned to see what others miss. like the way you handle those plates. Classic French training hidden beneath modern efficiency. Summers with my grandmother in Paris. Mary adjusted the lighting, creating a more intimate atmosphere as another thunderclap shook the penthouse. She taught me that food isn't just sustenance, it's love made tangible. Hours passed as the storm raged outside. They talked of dreams and determination, of paths not taken and choices that led them here. John's color improved with each bite of Antoine's carefully prepared meal, while Mary found herself drawn deeper into conversation with this man who saw beyond surfaces to the heart of things. As dawn approached, the storm finally began to ease. The first hints of sunrise painted the rain-washed windows in gentle gold, transforming the penthouse into a sanctuary of soft light and shared secrets. "You saved my life tonight," John said softly, watching the city awaken below. "Antoine saved your life," Mary corrected. "I just delivered the means." "No." He turned to face her, strength returned but vulnerability remaining in his eyes. "You delivered something far more valuable than an antidote." "What's that?" His smile held the warmth of a perfectly risen soufflé. "The reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary things come in unexpected packages." Lightning flashed one final time, distant now, like nature's farewell to a night of destinies changed and boundaries crossed. In its illumination, Mary saw the future rewriting itself, a delivery girl and a CEO brought together by storm and circumstance, creating something neither had expected, but both had perhaps always needed. The night that had begun in thunder and urgency ended in gentle rain and quiet understanding. Something had been delivered that couldn't be contained in any thermal bag or protected by any specialized equipment. The first ingredients of a love story that would change not just their lives, but the very recipe of what society deemed possible. For in that penthouse above Manhattan's awakening streets, two hearts had found their perfect pairing, proving that sometimes the most exquisite dishes come from ingredients that fate alone knows how to combine. As dawn approached, the storm finally began to ease. The first hints of sunrise painted the rain-washed windows in gentle gold, transforming the penthouse into a sanctuary of soft light and shared secrets. John had finally dozed off on the sofa, the antidote working its way through his system, while Mary maintained her vigil by the windows. "You saved my life tonight," he murmured sleepily, his eyes opening briefly to find her silhouetted against Manhattan's awakening skyline. "Antoine saved your life," Mary corrected softly, watching the city emerge from the storm's shadow. "I just delivered the means." "No." Despite his exhaustion, his voice carried conviction. "You delivered something far more valuable than an antidote." "What's that?" His smile held the warmth of a perfectly risen soufflé, even as his eyes drifted closed again. "The reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary things come in unexpected packages." Lightning flashed one final time, distant now, like nature's farewell to a night of destinies changed and boundaries crossed. In its illumination, Mary saw the future rewriting itself, a delivery girl and a CEO brought together by storm and circumstance, creating something neither had expected, but both had perhaps always needed. She settled into the armchair near him, prepared to watch over his recovery until full daylight. Something had been delivered that couldn't be contained in any thermal bag or protected by any specialized equipment. The first ingredients of a love story that would change not just their lives, but the very recipe of what society deemed possible. For in that penthouse above Manhattan's awakening streets, two hearts had found their perfect pairing, proving that sometimes the most exquisite dishes come from ingredients that fate alone knows how to combine. And as the night storm faded into morning's promise, Mary Virginia prepared herself for whatever the new day might bring. Chapter 2. Trust in the Storm Dawn. painted Manhattan's skyline in watercolor hues, the night's fierce storm gentling into a soft morning mist. Mary Virginia stood at the penthouse windows, watching the city awaken while monitoring John Williams' reflection in the glass. He'd finally fallen into a peaceful sleep an hour ago, the antidote working its way through his system. The elegant living room showed signs of their night-long vigil, empty espresso cups, careful notes tracking his symptoms, and the remains of Chef Antoine's life-saving meal. She'd insisted on staying despite John's protests, recognizing the vulnerability beneath his executive armor. A sound from the sofa drew her attention. John stirred, his eyes opening with surprising clarity. "You're still here." "Of course." Mary turned from the window, professional demeanor softened by shared experience. "Someone had to make sure you didn't try hosting a board meeting while poisoned." His laugh turned into a slight cough. "Speaking of the board..." He reached for his phone, but Mary moved faster. Antoine's instructions were clear: 24 hours of rest before you tackle the viper's nest. She held the phone just out of reach, surprising herself with her boldness. Doctor's orders, well, chef's orders. "And what makes you think I'll listen?" Despite his words, amusement warmed his voice. "Because I've already called your assistant and cleared your schedule." Mary settled into the armchair opposite him, chin lifting slightly. "Citing a severe case of food poisoning, which isn't entirely untrue." Instead of anger at her presumption, respect flickered across John's features. "You're remarkably efficient at managing poisoned CEOs. Hidden talent?" "First time, actually." Mary allowed herself a small smile. "But I've built my business on discretion and attention to detail. Your assistant, Jessica, was quite helpful once I explained the situation in appropriately vague terms." John sat up slowly, testing his strength. "My security team must be slipping, letting you make calls from my penthouse." "Your security team knows me. I've delivered here before, though usually to your corporate events, not directly to you." Mary glanced at her own phone. "And Chef Antoine called them at midnight to authorize my presence." "He really did think of everything." John's expression turned thoughtful. "Tell me, how does someone with your obvious intelligence and organizational skills end up as a delivery person, even a high-end one?" "Because I turned it into more than delivery." Mary's passion crept into her voice. "I created a premium service that caters to Manhattan's elite. Specialized temperature-controlled equipment, real-time tracking, complete discretion. Every detail designed to protect the reputation of restaurants like Le Petit Jardin." "And the motorcycle?" "Fastest way through Manhattan traffic. Custom modified for stability and protection of the cargo." She caught his intrigued expression. "You're not the only one who understands innovation, Mr. William." "John," he corrected softly. "After sharing an assassination attempt, I think we can move to first names." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the gentle patter of morning rain. Mary found herself studying his features in the dawn light. The strength in his jaw, the intelligence in his eyes, the way authority sat naturally on his shoulders, even in a moment of vulnerability. "You should try to eat something." She stood, moving toward the kitchen. "Nothing fancy, just toast to start." "Join me?" The question held more weight than a simple breakfast invitation. Mary hesitated. The night's intimacy had felt natural, wrapped in darkness and emergency. But daylight brought complications. He was still a CEO worth billions, and she was still a delivery girl with dreams of her own restaurant. "I know that look." John's voice carried unexpected gentleness. "You're drawing lines between our worlds. Don't..." "Lines exist for a reason," she replied, but returned to her seat. "Especially in Manhattan. Those lines nearly got me killed." He leaned forward, intensity rolling off him in waves. "My board thought I was too unpredictable. too willing to challenge the old ways. They saw my background in actual kitchen work as a liability. You worked in kitchens? Mary couldn't hide her surprise. How do you think I met Antoine? Summer jobs in Paris while studying abroad. I believe in understanding every level of a business. His eyes held hers. And I believe the best innovations come from unexpected places or people. The weight of his words hung in the air between them. Mary felt the carefully constructed walls around her heart tremble. If you're trying to hire me, I should warn you, I don't work for others anymore. I built something of my own. Hire you? John smiled, the expression transforming his whole face. Mary Virginia, I'm trying to court you. The bold declaration stole her breath. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, sending rays of gold across the penthouse floor. In that light, Mary saw the truth in his eyes. No games, no power plays, just genuine attraction wrapped in newfound respect. You don't even know me, she managed. I know you spent the night saving my life instead of calling the police. I know you protected my privacy while ensuring my safety. I know you built a successful business based on understanding what the elite really need. He stood carefully, crossing the space between them. And I know that in all my years running restaurants and hotels, I've never met anyone who intrigued me more. This is crazy, but Mary didn't move away as he reached for her hand. The press would have a field day. Let them. His fingers intertwined with hers. My board already thinks I'm unpredictable. Why not prove them right in the most delightful way possible? The morning light painted everything in shades of possibility. Mary looked at their joined hands, his bearing the subtle calluses of someone who hadn't forgotten his kitchen days, hers strong from years of managing her motorcycle through city streets, different paths leading to this improbable moment. Have dinner with me, he said. Not here, not as a delivery. Let me cook for you. You cook? Antoine's best student, according to him. Pride mixed with humility in his voice. Though I suspect he was being kind. Mary felt laughter bubble up, genuine and free. The great John William, cooking dinner for his delivery girl. Now that would make headlines. Is that a yes? She studied him. The hopeful light in his eyes, the quiet confidence, the way he held her hand like it was something precious rather than possessive. In her grandmother's novels, this would be the moment where love conquered all obstacles. But this wasn't fiction, and real life held more complications than any romance novel. Yes, she heard herself say, but not tonight. Tonight you rest and plan how to handle your board, and I need to talk to Antoine. About how he knew. Mary squeezed his hand gently. How he knew to send me tonight, when you needed more than just an antidote. John's smile held secrets and promises. Some things can't be explained, like why I'm more interested in my would-be assassin's matchmaking skills than their attempt on my life. You're still feeling the effects of the poison, Mary teased, but her heart wasn't in the jest. Something was happening here, something that defied explanation. Maybe. He brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Or maybe this is exactly what clarity feels like. The city stretched below them, still damp from the storm, but gleaming with renewed purpose. Mary felt her carefully ordered world shifting, realigning around this unexpected connection. Tomorrow would bring challenges, board members to confront, press to manage, social hierarchies to navigate. But for now, in the gentle morning light, she allowed herself to believe in the kind of love her grandmother always promised existed. The kind that arrived like a storm, washing away boundaries and leaving everything changed in its wake. John's phone buzzed on the table, reality intruding on their moment. But before either of them moved to answer it, he pulled her closer, his free hand cupping her cheek. "Thank you," he whispered, "for delivering more than just dinner." Mary smiled, feeling the last of her defenses crumble. Thank you for being worth saving. The phone buzzed again, insistent. The day was beginning, bringing with it all the complexity of their separate worlds colliding. But as they reluctantly parted to face it, both knew nothing would ever be quite the same. The storm had passed, but its effects would ripple through their lives forever, and somehow that felt exactly right. Chapter 3. Whispers and Warnings. The lunch rush at Le Petit Jardin hummed with refined energy as Mary stepped through the kitchen's back entrance. Chefs moved in choreographed precision, creating culinary masterpieces for Manhattan's elite. She breathed in the familiar symphony of herbs, spices, and tradition. "Ma petite sauveuse!" Chef Antoine's voice boomed across the kitchen. He wiped his hands on his apron, dismissing his sous chef with a nod. Come, we have much to discuss." Mary followed him to his private office, a tiny space filled with photographs of famous guests and handwritten recipes. Antoine closed the door, his usually jovial expression turning serious. "They're asking questions about you," he said without preamble. "The board members, they know something went wrong with their plan." "How?" Mary settled into the worn leather chair, concern threading through her voice. "Because John William walked into his office this morning, very much alive and twice as determined." Antoine's eyes twinkled. "And announced a complete restructuring of the company's restaurant division, starting with the board." "He shouldn't be working yet," Mary muttered, then caught Antoine's knowing smile. "That's not the point, is it?" "No. The point is, ma chérie, that you're now part of a very dangerous game." He pulled a folder from his desk. "These arrived at your delivery service office this morning. My contact in security intercepted them." Mary opened the folder, her breath catching. Photos of her entering the Aurora, time stamped from that stormy night. More of her leaving the next morning. And most concerning, surveillance shots from the past week, showing her daily routes. "They're watching me." "Oui. But they don't know what you know." Antoine sat behind his desk, fingers steepled. "Tell me, did you look at the papers on John's coffee table that night?" "Of course not. I was focused on keeping him alive." "Mais non. You were focused on his eyes, his smile, the way he looked at you like you hung the moon." Antoine's teasing held an edge of seriousness. "But if you had looked, you would have seen their whole plan. The poison was just phase 1. A knock at the door interrupted them. Antoine's sous chef entered with urgent news about a VIP reservation. As the chef dealt with the crisis, Mary studied the surveillance photos more closely. Something about the angles nagged at her memory. Her phone chimed with a message from John, "Missing you. Dinner still on for tonight?" Before she could reply, another message arrived. This one from an unknown number. "Stay away from him, or the next delivery will be your last." "They're getting desperate," Antoine said, returning to his desk, "which means you're both in danger." Both. The board thought John was a liability before. Now, Antoine spread his hands expressively. A CEO who survives their poison attempt and falls for a delivery girl, set impossible. They'll never allow it. Allow it? Mary felt steel enter her spine. They don't control his personal life. In their world, they control everything. Antoine's voice softened. But maybe that's exactly why you're perfect for him. You've never played by their rules. Mary's phone chimed again. "John, got your favorite table at Bella Luna. Let me prove I remember everything Antoine taught me." "He's cooking for you." Antoine clapped his hands in delight. "Magnifique. At least at Bella Luna I can have friends watching over you both." "I should cancel," Mary said, holding up the threatening message. "Keep him safe." "Et briser son cœur? Break his heart?" Antoine shook his head firmly. "Non. We protect him, and you, by being smarter than them." He pulled out a piece of paper, sketching quickly. They expect you to run scared. Instead, we set a trap. You go to dinner, let them think they're in control. Meanwhile, Mary leaned forward as Antoine detailed his plan. Outside the office, Le Petit Jardin's lunch service continued its elegant dance. In a boardroom across town, men in expensive suits plotted their next move. And somewhere between these worlds, a love story refused to follow anyone's rules but its own. "One more thing," Antoine said as Mary stood to leave. "That night, when I sent you to him, I didn't know about the poison." "What?" "I knew he was in danger, oui. I knew he needed someone extraordinary." The chef's eyes misted slightly. "But mostly, I knew he needed you, because you see him, not the CEO, not the billionaire. Just him." Mary felt warmth spread through her chest. "How could you know?" "The same way I know when a sauce is perfect, when a soufflé will rise, when a meal will change lives." He smiled softly. "Some things, ma chérie, you feel in your soul." Her phone buzzed again. The unknown number. Last warning. Mary straightened her shoulders, decision made. "Tell me more about this trap we're setting." Antoine's grin turned wolfish. "Ah, now that's why you're perfect for him. They expect fear, but you..." He kissed her cheeks. "You choose love." Evening approached, carrying with it promises and threats in equal measure. In her apartment, Mary prepared for a dinner that could change everything. In his office, John fought battles she couldn't see. And in the shadows, their enemies watched, unaware that sometimes the most powerful weapon is a heart that refuses to be denied. The stage was set. The players were moving into position, and somewhere in Manhattan's glittering maze of ambition and power, destiny smiled, knowing that some love stories refused to be intimidated into silence. Mary sent a final message before leaving to meet John. "Can't wait to taste your cooking. And don't worry, I bring my own antidote." His reply came instantly, brave and beautiful. "What did I do to deserve you?" She smiled, tucking the phone away. The answer, she knew, wasn't about deserving. It was about recognizing something rare and having the courage to fight for it. Tonight would test that courage, but Mary Virginia had never been one to back down from a challenge, especially not when the reward was a love story even her grandmother couldn't have imagined. Chapter 4. Midnight Kitchen. The Aurora Hotel's professional kitchen gleamed in the midnight hour, stainless steel surfaces reflecting the understated lighting. Mary Virginia's footsteps echoed softly as she moved through the empty space, breathing in the lingering aromas of herbs and fresh-baked bread. After their interrupted dinner at Bella Luna, cut short by an urgent board call, she'd found herself unable to sleep, drawn to the one place that always calmed her soul. The kitchen had become her sanctuary over the past month, a hidden refuge where she experimented with recipes during the quiet hours between premium deliveries. The head chef, impressed by her knowledge and Antoine's recommendation, had given her after-hours access. Here, she could perfect the dishes that would one day grace her own restaurant's menu. She didn't expect anyone else to be there at this hour, which was why the sound of whisking from the pastry station made her freeze. "Your technique is perfect," she said, recognizing the broad shoulders and rolled sleeves, "but most CEOs don't sneak into hotel kitchens at midnight." John William turned, a streak of flour across his cheek, somehow making him even more handsome. "Most CEOs don't know how to make proper crème pâtissière either, but Antoine insisted it was essential." "And why are you making pastry cream at midnight?" Mary moved closer, inhaling the vanilla-scented air around him. "Because I couldn't sleep after that ridiculous board call interrupted our dinner." He continued whisking, his movements confident and practiced. "And because I saw your motorcycle in the parking garage." Heat bloomed in Mary's chest. "You were looking for me." "Always." The simple word carried worlds of meaning. "Besides, I promised to cook for you. Better late than never. Mary hopped onto a clean counter, legs swinging slightly. In the hotel's kitchen? I own the hotel. His eyes sparkled with mischief. And I missed seeing you in action. The way you move in a kitchen. It's like watching a dance, says the man making pastry cream from memory. She watched his technique appreciatively. Most billionaires would just buy dessert. Most billionaires didn't spend their college summers learning the proper way to temper chocolate. He set aside the perfect pastry cream and began gathering more ingredients. Antoine would disown me if I served store-bought anything. The mention of Antoine sobered them both slightly. Their mentor had been investigating the board's broader plans, using his vast network of restaurant industry connections. Each day brought new revelations about how deep the conspiracy ran. "Any news?" Mary asked, accepting the spare apron John handed her. "The board's called an emergency session for tomorrow morning." He measured flour with practiced precision. "Apparently, my recent behavior requires immediate attention." "Your behavior?" Mary began zesting oranges at his gesture, falling naturally into a cooking partnership. "You mean surviving their assassination attempt? Or dating someone they can't control?" "Both, probably." John's hand stilled on the mixer. "They're trying to force a competency hearing, claiming my near-death experience has made me unstable." "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" His voice carried an edge of vulnerability she rarely heard. "I'm 35, running a global corporation, and instead of networking at charity galas, I'm baking orange chocolate soufflés at midnight with the woman who's turned my world upside down." Mary set down her zester, moving to stand before him. "Do you regret it?" "Not for a second." He cupped her face with flour-dusted hands. "You make me feel alive in a way board meetings never could." The kiss tasted of vanilla and possibility. Mary melted into it, feeling the solid strength of him, the way his hands trembled slightly against her skin. When they parted, his eyes held a mix of passion and playfulness that made her heart race. "We should probably finish the soufflés," she whispered against his lips. "Probably." But he didn't move away. "Though I'm starting to think the board might be right about one thing." "Oh?" "I am unstable around you. Completely, wonderfully unstable." His smile lit up his whole face. "You make me want impossible things." "Like what?" "Like selling everything and opening a small restaurant in Paris." He brushed his thumb across her cheek. "Just cooking, creating, living without the weight of empire on my shoulders." Mary's heart squeezed. "You'd give it all up? For the right reason?" His gaze held hers steadily. In a heartbeat. The moment stretched between them, heavy with implications. Then Mary reached up and smeared a dot of flour on his nose. "First, let's see if you can handle a midnight soufflé. Then we'll talk about Paris." His laughter echoed through the kitchen as they returned to their tasks, moving in perfect synchronization. They worked steadily, the comfortable silence broken only by occasional instructions or playful teasing. Mary found herself studying him, the precise way he separated eggs, the confident lift of his chin as he folded ingredients, the pure joy that radiated from him in this environment. "You really do love cooking," she said softly. "It's honest work." He began preparing the soufflé molds with practiced strokes. "In the kitchen, you either have skill or you don't. Money can't make a soufflé rise." "Is that why the board hates me? Because I represent that other world?" John set down his brush, turning to face her fully. "They hate you because you remind them of what they've lost. The ability to find joy in creating something beautiful. The courage to chase dreams instead of dollars." A noise from the corridor interrupted them. They froze, listening intently, but the sound didn't repeat. "We should check the security cameras," John said, tension entering his frame. "After we get these in the oven." Mary's practical nature took over. A fallen soufflé is an unforgivable tragedy. He smiled at that, but she noticed him positioning himself between her and the door as they finished their work. Once the soufflés were safely baking, John moved to the security panel hidden behind a steel cabinet. "The cameras are off," he said, frowning. "They should never be off." Mary felt a chill that had nothing to do with the kitchen's temperature. Someone's watching us. They've been watching since that first night. John's jaw tightened. "We knew that." "Yes, but this is different." Mary gestured around the kitchen. This was private, special. "Hey!" He pulled her close, flour and all. "Nothing they do can take this away. Not the cooking, not the connection, not us." As if in agreement, the timer chimed. Perfect timing, as proper soufflés demanded. They plated their midnight creation with professional flair, adding fresh berries and a dusting of powdered sugar. "Beautiful," John murmured, but he wasn't looking at the dessert. Mary felt herself blush under his gaze. "We should take these somewhere safer to eat. My office has good security." He gathered their plates. "And a perfect view of the city." They cleaned their workstation with efficient movements, leaving the kitchen spotless. But as they headed toward the service elevator, Mary couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Their midnight cooking session had been more than just making soufflés. It was a declaration, a glimpse of a possible future that had nothing to do with corporate power or social status. And somewhere in the darkness, their enemies had witnessed it all, had seen not just a CEO and a delivery girl, but two people whose connection threatened everything they thought they controlled. The elevator doors closed on their private smile, their perfect soufflés, their shared dream of a different life. And in the empty kitchen, the security cameras quietly clicked back on, recording nothing but gleaming surfaces and lingering possibilities. The board would see the footage tomorrow, would see their CEO practicing French pastry at midnight, looking happier than he ever had in the boardroom, would see the way he moved around a kitchen with the same confidence he showed in negotiations. But what they couldn't understand, was that some things couldn't be controlled. Like soufflés that rose perfectly despite midnight timing, like connections that defied social boundaries, like love that bloomed in unexpected places, refusing to bow to corporate pressure or social expectations. In John's secure office, as they savored their creation and watched the city sparkle below, Mary finally voiced what they both knew. "They're going to try something bigger, aren't they?" "Yes." John's hand found hers, steady and strong. "But they don't understand what they're really fighting." "And what's that?" His smile held all the warmth of their shared kitchen moments. "The fact that some ingredients, when combined at just the right moment, create something absolutely unstoppable." The soufflés were perfect, of course, but it was the taste of possibility that lingered on their lips long after the plates were empty. Chapter 5. Protecting Hearts. The grand ballroom of the Astor Museum buzzed with Manhattan's elite, champagne flutes clinking beneath crystal chandeliers. Mary Virginia stood at the edges of the charity gala, her simple black dress a stark contrast to the designer gowns surrounding her. She wasn't here as a guest. Her premium delivery service had been hired to provide late-night snacks for the wealthy donors. But her attention kept drifting to the center of the room, where John William commanded attention without effort. He moved through the crowd with practiced ease, every inch the powerful CEO. Yet she noticed the subtle tension in his shoulders, the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "He's different when he looks at you," a silky voice said beside her. Mary turned to find an elegantly dressed woman studying her with calculated interest. More alive, more vulnerable. "I'm sorry, you are?" Victoria Sinclair? The woman's smile held no warmth. I was engaged to John last year, before he developed his unfortunate fascination with common things. Mary felt the insult slide off her like water. Fascinating. Did you also share his passion for French cuisine, or were you too busy being uncommon? Victoria's perfectly painted lips tightened. You don't belong in his world. The board understands that, even if John's temporarily forgotten. The board? Mary kept her voice neutral, though her heart raced. I wasn't aware they managed his personal life. They manage everything that affects William Enterprises. Victoria sipped her champagne, including removing threats to the company's reputation. Like attempted murder. The glass froze halfway to Victoria's lips. I don't know what you think you know. I know enough. Mary stepped closer, lowering her voice. Tell your friends on the board that the next time they want to poison someone, they shouldn't use a source reduction. The heat concentrates the toxin, makes it traceable. Color drained from Victoria's face. Before she could respond, a familiar voice cut through the tension. Mary? John appeared beside them, his hand finding the small of her back naturally. Victoria, I wasn't aware you two had met. Just getting acquainted. Mary leaned into his touch. Victoria was sharing some fascinating insights about boardroom politics. Understanding flickered in John's eyes. Was she? How generous? His tone could have frozen champagne. If you'll excuse us, Victoria, my girlfriend and I have dinner plans. They left Victoria staring after them, her perfectly manicured hands clenched around her glass. In the hallway outside the ballroom, John pulled Mary into a quiet alcove. What did she say to you? His voice was tight with concern. Nothing I hadn't guessed. Mary straightened his bow tie, using the gesture to ground herself, but she confirmed the board's involvement. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. Because they're planning something bigger. John caught her hands in his. Mary, maybe we should... Don't. She pressed her fingers to his lips. Don't suggest I step back for my own safety. I didn't run when they tried to kill you. I'm not running now. The love in his eyes nearly overwhelmed her. I don't deserve you. Good thing love isn't about deserving. She smiled up at him. Now, about those dinner plans. Actually, there's something I need to show you first. He led her through the museum's quiet corridors, their footsteps echoing off marble floors. Antoine's sources found something interesting in the board's private communications. They entered a small office, where John quickly accessed a hidden laptop. Watch this. Security footage played across the screen, showing the board's private dining room 2 days before the poisoning attempt. Mary leaned closer, watching as Victoria entered with a small package, handing it to one of the senior board members. Pause it there. Mary pointed to a detail in the corner. That logo on the package. I've seen it before. Where? In Chef Antoine's records. It's a specialized chemical supplier that some molecular gastronomy restaurants use. She met John's gaze. The same supplier that someone used to order unusual compounds the week before you were poisoned. Can you access those records? Mary smiled slowly. Better. I delivered to that supplier last week. The owner's quite chatty when you bring him those special macarons from Le Petit Jardin. John's answering smile held a predatory edge. Have I mentioned lately that your delivery service is remarkably useful for corporate espionage? Is that all I'm useful for? She teased, trying to lighten the moment. His expression softened as he pulled her close. You're useful for reminding me what really matters, for making me feel like more than just a CEO, for... A noise in the hallway cut him off. They froze, listening intently. Footsteps approached, then retreated. We need to move, John whispered. If they find us with this evidence... Mary was already shutting down the laptop. My delivery bike's outside. They won't expect you to leave on that. Miss Virginia, Are you suggesting I flee a charity gala on the back of your motorcycle? Scared, Mr. William? His laugh was quiet but genuine. Of the motorcycle? Number of how much I'm falling in love with you? Terrified. The confession hung between them, more powerful for its simple honesty. Mary felt her heart expand, even as fear for their safety prickled at her nerves. Then hold on tight, she said, taking his hand, to both. They slipped out through the service entrance, the night air carrying the first hint of autumn. Mary's motorcycle waited in the shadows, sleek and subtle. As she handed John the spare helmet, she caught movement near the museum's main entrance, Victoria speaking urgently into her phone. They'll trace the security footage, John said as he settled behind her on the bike. Mary started the engine with a soft purr. Let them. Sometimes the best way to protect something is to let everyone see exactly what you're willing to fight for. His arms tightened around her waist as they merged into traffic, leaving the glittering gala behind. Neither spoke, but Mary felt the significance of the moment. A CEO and a delivery girl fleeing danger together. It should have felt like a fairy tale. Instead, it felt like reality, finally making sense. Later, safe in John's penthouse, they spread out the evidence they'd gathered. Receipts, security footage, financial trails, all pointing to a conspiracy that went beyond simple corporate maneuvering. They won't stop, Mary said softly, not even after we expose this. No. John's voice was equally quiet. Because it's not just about the company anymore. It's about control. Over the board, over me, over what's acceptable in their world. And us? He turned to her, his eyes holding that same mix of vulnerability and strength that had first drawn her in. Us is non-negotiable. Let them try to control that. Mary touched his face gently. They'll call me a gold digger, say I'm using you. While my ex-fiancé helps them plot murder? He shook his head. Let them talk. You've never asked me for anything except to be myself. That's not entirely true. She smiled mischievously. I did ask for your chocolate soufflé recipe. His laugh broke the tension. He pulled her into his arms, swaying slightly to music only they could hear. Outside, the city glittered with possibilities and threats in equal measure. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new attempts to tear them apart. But for now, they had this. Evidence of crimes, proof of love, and the unshakable certainty that some things were worth fighting for. Even if the fight meant facing down the most powerful people in Manhattan. After all, as Mary had learned that first stormy night, the most important deliveries weren't about food at all. They were about hope and trust and the courage to accept something extraordinary when it appeared, even if it came with a side of corporate intrigue and attempted murder. Chapter 6. Corporate Storm. The William Enterprises boardroom crackled with tension as Mary Virginia placed a stack of folders in front of each board member. Her heels clicked against marble as she moved around the table, professional demeanor masking the fury in her heart. These men and women in their $1,000 suits had tried to murder the man she loved. John Williams stood at the head of the table, every inch the CEO despite the whispers about his competency. His steel blue eyes tracked Mary's movement, a subtle smile playing at his lips as she completed her task. Gentlemen, ladies, he addressed the board. You called this emergency session to discuss my recent behavior. I thought it appropriate to bring someone who's been instrumental in my personal investigations. This is highly irregular, Bradford Monroe, the senior board member, sputtered. A delivery girl has no place. Please, Mary cut in smoothly, open your folders. Papers rustled as 12 pairs of manicured hands revealed their contents. Mary watched faces pale, hands tremble, and eyes widen as they absorbed the evidence within. As you can see, she continued, her voice carrying easily in the stunned silence, I deliver more than just dinner. Sometimes I deliver justice. Security footage stills showed Victoria's chemical delivery. Bank records traced payments to shell companies. Employee statements detailed suspicious orders. And most damning, chemical analysis of the poison traced directly to the board's private supplier. "This is absurd," Victoria declared from her observer's seat near the window. "You can't possibly expect anyone to believe." "The police believed it." John's quiet statement dropped like a bomb. "They're executing search warrants across the city as we speak, including your penthouse, Victoria." Chaos erupted. Board members shouted accusations, legal threats, desperate denials. Through it all, Mary stood calmly beside John, their united front a silent declaration, until Bradford Munro played his final card. "Release the photos," he commanded into his phone. Seconds later, every board member's phone chimed. Mary's heart sank as she saw the images appear. Intimate moments captured through telephoto lenses. Her and John cooking at midnight, sharing quiet dinners, dancing in his penthouse, private moments made public. "Think of the scandal," Bradford purred. "America's most eligible CEO, seduced by a common delivery girl. Your shareholders will run screaming." John's hand found Mary's, squeezing gently. "You still don't understand, do you?" "Understand what?" "That you've given me exactly what I wanted." John's smile turned predatory. "A reason to take this company in a new direction, away from toxic traditions and towards something more human. The board won't allow..." "The board is under arrest." Detective Sarah Chen strode in, flanked by officers. "Bradford Munro, Victoria Sinclair, and other named conspirators, you're under arrest for attempted murder, corporate espionage, and conspiracy." As handcuffs clicked closed around expensive watches, Mary felt John tense beside her. She knew what this moment cost him, not just professionally, but personally. These people had been his mentors, his colleagues, his ex-fiancé. "John," Victoria called as they led her out. "You're throwing away everything for what? Love?" He turned to Mary, his eyes soft despite the storm raging around them. "Number 4, authenticity. For the chance to be more than what others decided I should be." Bradford's bitter laugh echoed from the doorway. "You'll regret this, both of you. The press will tear you apart." "Let them try." Mary's voice carried quiet strength. "Some things are worth fighting for." Later, in John's office, they watched the media frenzy unfold on multiple screens. Headlines screamed about scandal, corruption, attempted murder. Their relationship was dissected, analyzed, criticized. "Having second thoughts?" John asked softly, as another outlet questioned his judgment in dating beneath his station. Mary turned from the windows, taking in the man who'd risked everything to choose love over power. "Only about letting them live stream the wedding." His startled laugh filled the space between them. "Was that a proposal, Miss Virginia?" "More like a declaration of intent." She moved into his arms. "I'm not going anywhere, no matter what they say about us." "Good." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Because I have plans." "Business plans?" "Life plans." His fingers traced her cheek. "Starting with buying that empty restaurant space on Fifth Avenue, the one you've been eyeing for your dream." Mary pulled back, surprised. "How did you—" "I pay attention." His smile held all the warmth that the board had tried to suppress. "And I believe in investing in what matters. I can't accept. It's not a gift." He cut off her protest. "It's an investment in us, in the future we both want." His eyes sparkled. "Besides, think of the marketing potential. From delivery girl to culinary queen, taste the story that shocked Manhattan." Mary laughed despite herself. "You're impossible." "I'm in love." He pulled her closer. "With a woman who saved my life, helped take down a corrupt board, and still believes in making her own way." Outside the office windows, cameras flashed as reporters gathered below. The business world was reeling from the day's revelations. Stock prices fluctuated wildly as markets tried to process a corporate scandal that read like a romance novel. But in that quiet office above the chaos, two people held on to something real, something that had started with a stormy night and a delivery that changed everything. "So," John murmured against her hair, "about that live-streamed wedding." Mary smiled against his chest. "Let's get through tomorrow's press conference first. Then we can talk about giving them something real to gossip about. Tomorrow's going to be intense. Good thing I deliver well under pressure." His laugh mingled with the fading sunlight streaming through the windows. Below them, Manhattan buzzed with speculation about the CEO and the delivery girl who brought down a corporate empire. But they knew the truth. Sometimes the greatest deliveries weren't planned. Sometimes they arrived in moments of crisis, wrapped in rain and danger and possibility. And sometimes, if you were brave enough to sign for them, they brought exactly what your heart had been waiting for all along. Chapter 7. Dreams of Forever. The first hints of dawn painted Manhattan's skyline in shades of promise as Mary Virginia's heels clicked softly against the marble floors of her soon-to-be restaurant. She'd received a mysterious text from John in the middle of the night. "Meet me at our future. Sunrise. Trust me." The massive space that would soon become serendipity held its breath in the early morning stillness. As she moved through the darkness, motion sensors activated soft lighting that revealed an enchanted pathway. Fresh rose petals, deep burgundy and blush pink, led deeper into the space, their delicate fragrance mingling with something else, the unmistakable aroma of fresh-baked croissants. Her heart quickened as she followed the trail. At each turn, John had left memories of their journey. The original delivery receipt from that stormy night, pressed between glass frames, the first menu they'd created together during their midnight cooking sessions. A photograph of them in Antoine's kitchen, caught in a moment of laughter as flour dusted their faces. The path led to their future kitchen space, where she stopped, breathless. Dozens of copper pots hung from a custom rack, catching the emerging dawn light, exact replicas of the set she'd admired in that tiny Parisian shop months ago. Each one gleamed with possibility, their surfaces reflecting the golden light like captured sunshine. A handwritten note rested on the central island. "Every dream begins with a single ingredient. Love. Follow your heart to the roof." Mary's fingers trembled as she traced his elegant handwriting. The John William that Manhattan knew, the powerful CEO, the corporate warrior, wrote in efficient, sharp strokes. But this John, her John, wrote with the same passion he brought to creating the perfect croissant or designing a life-changing program for aspiring chefs. The rooftop door opened to reveal a scene that stole her breath. John had transformed the space into a Parisian morning market, complete with weathered wooden crates overflowing with fresh herbs and flowers. Antique copper planters lined the edges, filled with lavender and rosemary that perfumed the morning air. String lights twinkled overhead like earthbound stars, their soft glow mixing with the approaching sunrise. At the center, a small cafe table waited with steaming cups of French press coffee, the beans imported from that little roastery they'd discovered on their first trip to Paris together. Fresh pastries, still warm from the oven, released tendrils of buttery perfume into the air. "You're early," John's voice carried from behind a flowering trellis, soft with emotion. "I wanted to catch the exact moment when sunrise first touched your face." He emerged into the gentle light, and Mary's heart skipped. He wore his chef's whites instead of his usual CEO suit, the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms dusted with flour. This was the John she loved most, the one who found more joy in creating perfect lamination in pastry dough than in closing million-dollar deals. "How long have you been planning this?" she asked, moving toward him as if pulled by an invisible thread. "Since that first night," he answered, reaching for her hands. since the moment you walked into my life with an antidote and stole my heart." His thumbs traced patterns on her palms, sending shivers up her arms. "I remember everything about you, Mary Virginia. Every dream you've whispered, every hope you've held close, every wish you thought was too grand to voice." He led her to the table, pulling out her chair with old-world grace. The coffee cups, she noticed, were from their favorite midnight cafe, the one where they'd hidden from paparazzi during the height of the board's attempts to separate them. "These croissants," she said, recognizing his signature lamination technique. "You made them tonight." "This morning, actually. Couldn't sleep." His smile held secrets and joy. "Too busy making sure every detail was perfect, like you." The pastries were indeed perfect, crisp outer shells giving way to buttery layers that melted on the tongue. Mary closed her eyes, savoring the taste of love baked into every bite. "There's more," John said softly. He produced a leather portfolio, not his corporate one, but a well-loved moleskin she recognized from their late-night planning sessions. Inside were drawings, plans, dreams made tangible. A cooking school for underprivileged youth, a rooftop garden that would supply fresh ingredients to local shelters, a community space where people from all walks of life could come together over the universal language of food. "This isn't just about us anymore," he explained, his voice rich with emotion. "It's about everyone who needs to believe that love can transcend boundaries, that dreams don't have social barriers, that the heart knows no class distinctions." Mary traced the drawings with wondering fingers, recognizing elements from conversations they'd had over midnight meals and early morning coffee. He'd remembered everything, woven all their shared dreams into a tapestry of possibility. "But there's one more ingredient needed," John said, standing and offering his hand. "One final element to make this recipe perfect." He led her to the edge of the roof, where the sun was just beginning to crown Manhattan's towers with gold. The city stretched below them, a testament to dreams realized and barriers overcome. "Before I show you," he said, turning to face her fully, "I want you to know something. The board was right about one thing. You did change me, but not in the way they feared." His hands cupped her face with infinite tenderness. "You reminded me that true success isn't measured in stock prices or corporate acquisitions. It's measured in moments of pure joy, in lives touched, in love shared." From behind the trellis, he produced one final copper pot, its surface catching the sunrise like liquid fire. Inside, nestled on a bed of rose petals, sat an elegant velvet box. "I'm not just offering you a restaurant," he said, dropping to one knee. The morning light haloed him, turning his chef's whites to gold. "I'm offering you my heart, my dreams, my future. Every recipe we'll create together, every life we'll touch, every moment we'll share." He opened the box to reveal a ring that took her breath away, not for its obvious value, but for its perfect understanding of her. The central diamond was set in rose gold, surrounded by tiny copper-colored stones that matched their special pots. The band was engraved with a phrase that brought tears to her eyes. "Love delivers dreams." "Marry me," he whispered, his voice carrying all the warmth of fresh-baked bread, all the complexity of perfectly aged wine, all the sweetness of first light touching sugar. "Not because I'm a CEO or you're a rising star chef. Marry me because when we're together, everything tastes better, feels righter, shines brighter." Mary felt tears slip down her cheeks as she pulled him to his feet. Words seemed inadequate in the face of such perfect understanding, such complete love. Instead, she kissed him, pouring every dream, every hope, every certainty into the connection. When they finally parted, the sun had fully risen, bathing them in golden light that seemed to emanate from their own glowing hearts. Around them, Manhattan awakened to a new day, unaware that on one special rooftop, a recipe for forever was being sealed with tears of joy and tastes of tomorrow. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "To all of it, to every dream, every plan, every moment. John slipped the ring onto her finger, and Mary felt the weight of all their shared possibilities settling into place. This wasn't just an engagement. It was a promise to keep believing in magic, in second chances, in love that arrived unexpectedly and changed everything. They spent the morning planning their future between kisses that tasted of perfect croissants and promises. The sun rose higher, warming the herbs around them until their fragrance filled the air like nature's blessing. Eventually, they would have to face the world below. The press, who would turn their engagement into headlines, the society that would buzz with opinions, the empire they would build together. But for now, they had this perfect moment, this rooftop sanctuary where love rose higher than any soufflé and dreams bloomed more beautifully than any garden. Because sometimes the most exquisite recipes aren't found in fancy cookbooks or passed down through generations. Sometimes they're written in moments like these, when two hearts find their perfect pairing in life's grand feast, when love simmers to perfection in the kitchen of destiny. And as they held each other in the morning light, surrounded by copper pots and possibilities, Mary and John knew that their greatest creation wouldn't be a restaurant or a corporation or even a culinary empire. It would be this love story, unexpected, unshakable, and perfectly seasoned with all the ingredients that made life worth savoring. The rest of Manhattan might be rushing into another busy day, but on their rooftop garden of dreams, time stood still, measured only in heartbeats and kisses and the promise of all the delicious moments yet to come. Chapter 8. Savory Choices. Moonlight spilled through the windows of Le Petit Jardin's empty dining room as Mary sat alone at her favorite table, the James Beard Foundation's letter before her. The prestigious award nomination should have filled her with pure joy, but instead, her heart felt heavy with the weight of choice. 6 months of intensive training in France, a dream opportunity that now felt like an impossible decision. The familiar scent of Antoine's signature beef bourguignon drifted from the kitchen, where the old chef worked late, preparing for tomorrow's service. The aroma carried memories of all the nights she'd spent here, learning, growing, dreaming of her own restaurant. Now those dreams were within reach, but at what cost? "I thought I'd find you here," John's voice carried through the quiet space, gentle as a whisper. He appeared in the doorway, still in his CEO suit but with the tie loosened, a sign of the long day he'd endured fighting the board's latest attacks. "How did you know?" Mary asked, though her heart already knew the answer. He always found her when she needed him most, because this is where our story really began. He moved through the moonlit room with quiet grace, where Antoine first saw what we could be, long before we knew ourselves. He settled into the chair beside her, close enough that she could catch the faint scent of his cologne, mingled with the lingering aroma of the morning's baking session. He'd been stress baking again, a habit she found endlessly endearing in a man who commanded a corporate empire. "You've seen the news?" she asked softly. "About the board's latest move?" His hand found hers naturally. "They're calling for a vote of no confidence, claiming my personal choices have compromised my business judgment." "Because of me." The words tasted bitter on her tongue. "No." His voice carried steel beneath its velvet. "Because they fear what we represent. Change, authenticity, the courage to choose love over protocol." Mary touched the James Beard letter with her free hand. "And now, this." John lifted the letter, reading it in the silvery light. His smile, when it came, held all the warmth of a perfectly proofed brioche. "Mary, this is incredible. The Rising Star Award, this could change everything for you." "For us," she corrected gently. "Everything we do affects us both now." He set the letter down, turning to face her fully. In the moonlight, His eyes held the same intensity they'd had that first stormy night. "Tell me what you're thinking, all of it." Mary stood, moving to the window where Manhattan's lights twinkled like earthbound stars. "I'm thinking about the night you almost died, about how choosing to stay, to fight for you, changed both our lives." She felt him approach, his presence warming her back. "And now I have another choice. 6 months in France, training with the masters, building the connections that could make our restaurant legendary." She turned to face him. "But 6 months away from you, while the board tries to destroy everything you've built." John's hands found her waist, pulling her gently closer. "Do you remember what you said to me the night we got engaged? About dreams and choices? That the best recipes come from unexpected combinations?" "Exactly." His smile held secrets and possibilities. "So let's create something unprecedented. Together." He led her to the kitchen, where Antoine pretended not to notice them as he stirred his bourguignon. The familiar space hummed with end-of-service energy, copper pots gleaming on their hooks, herbs releasing their fragrance in the warmth. "The board thinks they can use your success against me," John said, rolling up his sleeves with practiced ease. "They believe your opportunity will either separate us or prove I'm too distracted by personal matters." He began gathering ingredients with the confidence of someone who knew this kitchen as well as his boardroom. Flour, butter, eggs, the foundations of something wonderful. "What they don't understand," he continued, measuring with precision, "is that love isn't about choosing between dreams. It's about finding ways to make them soar together." Mary watched his hands move with practiced grace, recognizing the beginnings of his signature pain au chocolat. "What are you suggesting?" "A revolution." His eyes sparkled as he worked the dough. "What if we turned your training into something bigger? Something that changes not just our lives, but the whole industry." Antoine abandoned all pretense of not listening, moving closer as John outlined his vision. A partnership with the James Beard Foundation, a program that would bring French masters to their restaurant, creating a new kind of culinary school that broke down barriers between fine dining and real-world experience. "Instead of you going to France," John explained, folding the dough with expert care, "we bring France here. Create a showcase for talent that crosses all social boundaries. The board would never approve." "The board," Antoine interrupted, "forgets that half of our investors are in the restaurant industry. People who understand that the future of cuisine lies in breaking down walls, not building them." Mary felt possibilities unfurling like the layers in John's pastry. "We could offer scholarships, create opportunities for people who could never afford traditional culinary school, while proving that innovation comes from unexpected places." John's hands were dusted with flour, but his eyes shone with executive brilliance. "The board wants to claim I'm distracted by love? I'll show them how love creates better business than fear ever could." The kitchen filled with the aroma of baking bread and brewing possibilities as they planned into the night. Antoine added his connections, his wisdom, his belief in their vision. Each idea built upon the last, creating something as perfectly layered as the pastry rising in the oven. "There will be resistance," Mary cautioned, though her heart already sang with the rightness of their plan. "Let them resist." John pulled her into a flour-dusted embrace. "While they're plotting in boardrooms, we'll be creating something real, something they can't touch because they don't understand it." "The magic of food?" she teased, breathing in his familiar scent of cologne and creativity. "The magic of authenticity." His thumb brushed flour from her cheek. "They spend so much time maintaining appearances, they've forgotten what it means to build something from the heart." Antoine watched them with paternal pride, his bourguignon simmering forgotten on the stove. "Now that's settled, perhaps we should discuss the real challenge." Harder than revolutionizing culinary education while fighting a hostile board? Mary asked. Oui, Antoine's eyes danced. Choosing the perfect menu for your wedding, one that tells your whole story. And just like that, they were planning again. John returned to his pastry. Mary started listing potential dishes, and Antoine offered sage advice about balancing tradition with innovation. The night deepened around them, but in Le Petit Jardin's kitchen, dawn was already breaking. They worked side by side, 4 hands moving in perfect synchronization, creating something that was more than just breakfast. Each roll of the dough, each careful fold, each loving touch was a promise of partnership, of passion, of possibilities yet to come. The pain au chocolat emerged from the oven just as the first hints of sunrise painted the kitchen windows. Golden, flaky, perfect, like their love, built layer by layer with patience and care. To choices, John said, breaking the warm pastry to share. To dreams, Mary added, accepting her piece. To love, Antoine finished, raising his coffee cup, the most important ingredient of all. Outside, Manhattan stirred to life, unaware that in one special kitchen, a revolution was rising with the sun. A future where love didn't mean sacrifice, where dreams complemented rather than competed, where the unlikeliest combinations created the most exquisite results. Because sometimes the best decisions weren't about choosing between paths, but about creating your own. About taking life's challenges and transforming them, like simple ingredients becoming something extraordinary in the hands of those who understood that love was the secret ingredient to every perfect recipe. Mary looked at these 2 men who believed in her so completely, her mentor and her fiancé, both wearing flower dust like badges of honor. In their eyes, she saw not the weight of choice, but the lightness of possibility. The James Beard letter still sat on the dining room table, but it no longer felt like a burden. Instead, it had become one more ingredient in their expanding recipe for happiness. Because true love, like true cuisine, wasn't about following traditional recipes. It was about having the courage to create something new, something uniquely yours, something that would change not just your life, but the lives of all those who tasted its magic. And as the morning light filled the kitchen with gold, Mary knew they had chosen correctly. Their love story would continue to break boundaries, change lives, and prove that sometimes the most powerful revolutions began with a simple question. What if we dared to do things differently? Chapter 9. Recipe for Justice. The morning light streamed through the windows of Mary's nearly completed restaurant, catching on copper pots and illuminating the state-of-the-art kitchen where 3 James Beard Foundation judges sat at the chef's counter. Their expressions remained carefully neutral as they sampled her innovative tasting menu, each dish telling part of her journey from delivery expert to rising culinary star. Behind her, John moved with practiced ease, playing sous chef as if he'd never been anything but a cook in love with his craft. The sight of him, her fiancé choosing to support her dreams instead of defending his company from the ongoing takeover attempt, made her heart swell. For your next course, Mary presented with quiet confidence, a study in unexpected harmony. Butter-poached lobster with midnight black garlic sauce, served with heritage corn polenta and storm-swept microgreens. The judges leaned forward, intrigued by the dramatic presentation. The dish looked like a thunderstorm on a plate. Dark sauce swirling through golden polenta, bright herbs scattered like lightning against the noir canvas. The inspiration, one judge inquired, pen poised above his notes. Mary caught John's eye, sharing a private smile. A stormy night when I learned that sometimes the most important deliveries aren't about food at all. Before the judge could probe further, the restaurant's front door burst open. Bradford Monroe strode in, flanked by lawyers and remaining board members, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the warm culinary space. "This inspection is over," he announced. This property now belongs to William Enterprises under new management. The judges looked between Mary and the intruders, clearly fascinated by this unexpected drama. John stepped forward, wiping his hands calmly on his apron. Actually, Bradford, you might want to check your paperwork again. We have enough proxy votes to do absolutely nothing. Mary's voice cut through his bluster. She nodded to Antoine, who had slipped in through the kitchen entrance. The old chef handed her a tablet displaying live stock ticker information. You see, she continued, moving to stand beside John, while you were busy plotting hostile takeovers, we were cooking up something special. John's smile held years of boardroom victories. Meet the new majority shareholders of William Enterprises, the United Culinary Arts Foundation, led by none other than Chef Antoine himself. Bradford's face purpled. Impossible! We tracked all major stock purchases. Oui, Antoine said cheerfully. You tracked the big moves, but did you notice all those small purchases? Chefs, restaurateurs, food service workers, each buying a few shares here and there over the past months? People who believe in our vision, John added, of a company that values innovation over tradition, passion over pedigree. Detective Chen entered with perfect timing, warrant in hand, and people whose investments were perfectly legal, unlike certain board members' recent activities. Mary watched the color drain from Bradford's face as his lawyers began backing away. But it was John's next move that truly surprised everyone. I'm willing to make a deal, he said calmly. Bradford's eyes narrowed with desperate hope. What kind of deal? Resign quietly, all of you. Sign the confession Detective Chen has prepared. John's voice held no malice, only certainty. In return, we don't pursue personal financial damages. Why would you offer that? Mary answered for him. Because sometimes the best revenge is living well. To demonstrate her point, she turned back to her judges. Now, shall we continue with the tasting? I believe we were discussing the power of unexpected combinations. The next hour unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. While Detective Chen processed Bradford's resignation and confession, Mary and John continued their culinary presentation. Each dish told part of their story, from that first stormy night through midnight cooking sessions to their shared dreams of changing the industry. Mary's final presentation brought appreciative murmurs from even the most stoic judge. For dessert, a trilogy of soufflés, dark chocolate with storm cloud tea, vanilla bean with golden courage, and rose petal with new beginnings. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is rise above expectations. As the perfectly timed soufflés rose proudly in their ramekins, John slipped his arms around her waist. Like a delivery girl who became a star chef and a CEO who remembered his first love was cooking, she added softly. The head judge stood, smoothing her napkin with deliberate grace. Miss Virginia, we came to evaluate a rising chef. Instead, we've witnessed a revolution in cuisine, in business, in breaking down barriers. She smiled warmly. The James Beard Foundation would be honored to not only grant you the Rising Star Award, but to partner with your culinary education program. Later that night, after the celebrations wound down, Mary and John stood in their rooftop garden. The herb beds were now lush with growth, promising fresh ingredients for tomorrow's dishes. String lights twinkled overhead, like stars brought down to earth. Quite a day, John mused, pulling her close. Corporate takeover thwarted, criminals convicted, culinary award won. And the best part? Mary turned in his arms. We did it together. No choosing between dreams, no sacrificing love for success. His kiss tasted of chocolate soufflé and triumph. To our next adventure. To all of them, she corrected. Every single one. Above them, a shooting star streaked across the Manhattan sky, nature's blessing on their victory. Below, their restaurant hummed with possibility. And between these moments, two people who had dared to deliver love against all odds held onto the future they'd fought so hard to create. Because sometimes the best recipes weren't about following rules or meeting expectations. They were about having the courage to combine unlikely ingredients and create something extraordinary, just like a delivery girl and a CEO who had proved that love could rise above any challenge as perfectly as a midnight soufflé. Chapter 10. Simmering Success. The kitchen of Serendipity bustled with morning preparation as Mary adjusted the collar of a nervous young chef's jacket. Diana, a former delivery driver with a passion for pastry, represented everything their culinary scholarship program stood for. Raw talent finally finding its chance to shine. "Remember," Mary said, straightening the girl's name tag, "the secret to perfect croissants isn't just in the technique. It's in the love you fold into each layer." "Like the ones Mr. William makes?" Diana asked, eyes bright with admiration. Mary smiled, remembering countless midnight baking sessions. "Exactly. Speaking of which..." Right on cue, John appeared through the kitchen's rear entrance, carrying a basket of fresh-baked croissants. His CEO suit had been replaced by chef's whites, though he'd kept his trademark blue tie, now tucked neatly beneath his apron. "Morning delivery," he announced, stealing a kiss from Mary as he passed. "Quality control approved." "You mean Antoine approved?" Mary teased, knowing their mentor still insisted on tasting John's baking daily. He said, and I quote, "Pas mal pour un CEO." John's French accent was atrocious but charming. High praise indeed. The kitchen staff, a mix of culinary students and experienced chefs, moved with practiced efficiency around them. Each student wore a special pin that marked them as scholarship recipients, but it was their confidence that truly set them apart. "First seating in 30 minutes, Mary reminded everyone. "Remember, today's special is love story soup," the staff chorused, referencing their signature dish that had won critical acclaim, a complex creation that combined unlikely ingredients into something magical, just like its creators. John watched Diana return to her pastry station, pride evident in his expression. "She reminds me of you." Same fire in her eyes. "She reminds me of us both," Mary corrected. "The drive to create something authentic, no matter what anyone thinks." Their conversation paused as Mary's phone chimed with a message from their contractor. The renovation of their second location, a combination cooking school and fine dining restaurant in Paris, was ahead of schedule. "Antoine's going to cry when he sees the kitchen plans," John said, reading over her shoulder. "Happy tears." Mary pulled up the latest designs. His dream of bringing American innovation to traditional French cuisine is finally happening. Speaking of dreams. John's voice softened as he steered her toward their private office. "Have you seen this morning's press?" He handed her the Wall Street Journal, where their innovative business model made front-page news. "Revolutionary restaurant group redefines corporate culture," the headline declared, followed by a detailed analysis of how they'd transformed both the culinary and business worlds. "Stock's up again," John noted casually. "Turns out treating people like family is good for business." "Who knew?" Mary touched the article's accompanying photo. Their entire staff, from dishwashers to executive chefs, gathered in the rooftop garden for a family meal. "We knew. From that first night, we knew what really mattered." "Money?" John teased. "Love," she corrected, pulling him close. "Love of food, of creativity, of giving people chances they deserve." Their moment was interrupted by excited voices from the kitchen. They emerged to find Antoine himself making a surprise inspection, his chef's whites crisp despite the early hour. "Mes enfants," he called out, embracing them both. "I come with news." The old chef could barely contain his excitement as he revealed that the James Beard Foundation wanted to create a new award category inspired by their program, the Innovation in Culinary Education Award. "They want you both to chair the committee," Antoine announced, "to help find more diamonds in the rough, more passion waiting to shine." Mary felt John's hand find hers, squeezing gently. They'd come so far from that stormy night of delivery and danger. Now they stood in their own kitchen, surrounded by dreams made real and lives they'd helped transform. "There's something else," John said, once the excitement died down. "Show them, love." Mary pulled out the blueprints they'd been saving for the perfect moment. The staff gathered around as she unveiled their next project. A series of small, mobile cooking schools designed to reach underserved communities. "Because everyone deserves a chance to chase their passion," she explained, "even if they can't come to us." Diana, the young pastry chef, wiped tears from her eyes. "Like food delivery, but instead of bringing meals, we're delivering dreams," John finished, "one kitchen at a time." Antoine beamed with paternal pride. "And you thought you were just a delivery girl and a CEO playing at love." "We were," Mary said softly. "But love has a way of delivering exactly what you need, exactly when you need it." The morning sun streamed through the windows, catching on copper pots and happy faces. In an hour, the restaurant would open for another day of breaking barriers and building bridges through the universal language of food. But for now, in this quiet moment of celebration, Mary and John held onto each other, and the truth they'd discovered that stormy night months ago, that the greatest success comes not from following recipes, but from following your heart. Diana's voice broke their reverie. "Chef, the croissants are ready for inspection." "Coming," they answered in unison, then laughed at their shared response. As they moved back into their kitchen's warm embrace, Mary caught John's eye. Happy, his smile held all the warmth of a perfectly proofed pastry. Deliciously so. Around them, their culinary family continued their morning dance, each person adding their own special ingredient to the recipe of success they'd created together. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary dishes come from combining unexpected elements with generous portions of love and a dash of serendipity. Chapter 11. Social Soufflé. The Metropolitan Museum's grand ballroom sparkled with old money and older prejudices as Mary Virginia adjusted her emerald silk gown. Tonight's charity gala would test everything she and John had built. Their first time hosting Manhattan's elite as equal partners rather than CEO and former delivery girl. Ready to scandalize society? John's voice carried familiar warmth as he appeared beside her, handsome in his tuxedo with a matching emerald tie. Scandalize? Mary's eyes danced with mischief. "I thought we'd just served them dinner." But this was no ordinary dinner. The gala marked the launch of their most ambitious project yet, a nationwide initiative to transform struggling restaurants into culinary training centers, funded by William Enterprises and staffed by graduates of their scholarship program. The guest list read like a who's who of American power. Industry titans, media moguls, social influencers. Many had once whispered behind their hands about the delivery girl who'd bewitched John William. Now they'd eat food prepared by chefs who'd once delivered their meals. "Chef, we're ready." Diana, their first scholarship graduate and now head pastry chef, approached with quiet confidence. She'd traded her delivery motorcycle for a prestigious position, but kept the determination that had first caught Mary's eye. The evening began with calculated precision. Each course told a story of transformation. Street food elevated to fine dining, traditional recipes reimagined, humble ingredients made extraordinary. But it was the servers who truly made the statement. Every member of the waitstaff wore a small pin indicating their journey. Former delivery workers, line cooks, food truck operators. each one now trained in elite service, proving that excellence knew no social bounds. "Is it true?" A society matron cornered Mary between courses. "That you're opening a cooking school in Paris?" "3, actually." Mary smiled warmly. "In partnership with Chef Antoine's foundation. But the French would never accept American innovation." John joined them smoothly. "They already have. Our first graduating class includes sons and daughters of Michelin-starred chefs, all eager to learn our modern techniques." The woman's protest died as servers presented the main course, a dish that had once been a simple delivery order, now transformed into culinary art. The whispers that spread through the ballroom weren't of scandal, but of delight. "You've changed things," Victoria Sinclair's voice cut through the pleasant buzz. She stood alone, elegant but diminished since her release from prison. "All of society's careful rules broken because of love." "Not broken," Mary corrected gently. "Expanded, like a perfect soufflé. There's room for everyone to rise." Victoria studied them for a long moment. "I never saw it when I was with John, the chef beneath the CEO, the passion behind the power." "Few did," John said quietly, "until someone special delivered exactly what I needed." The moment was interrupted by excited murmurs as Diana's dessert masterpiece entered, a chocolate sculpture garden representing their mobile cooking schools, each piece edible and exquisite. "Your protégé has surpassed you," Antoine appeared, pride evident in his voice. "That's the point." Mary squeezed the old chef's hand. "Every generation rising higher than the last." As the evening wound down, John led Mary to the museum's rooftop garden. The Manhattan skyline glittered below, a constellation of possibilities. "Look there," he pointed to a distant light, "our first restaurant." "And there," she indicated another direction, "the hotel where you almost died, and I fell in love." "Terrible business strategy," he teased, pulling her close, "falling for an assassination target." "Wonderful life strategy, though." She turned in his arms. "Speaking of which," John's eyes widened as he caught her meaning. "Are you—" "Antoine's been forcing crackers on me all evening." Mary laughed softly. "He knew before I did. Said the glow of new life can't be hidden from an old chef's eyes." Joy transformed John's face as he dropped to one knee, not caring about his tuxedo. His hands spanned her still flat stomach with reverence. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "I promise to teach you everything I know about soufflés and success and loving without limits." Mary ran her fingers through his hair, heart overflowing. "And I promise to show you that life's greatest achievements often come disguised as simple deliveries." Above them, a shooting star streaked across the sky, nature's blessing on their expanding family. Below, their guests enjoyed the last bites of dessert, unaware that the evening's greatest miracle was happening on the roof. "We should tell them," John said, rising to hold her properly. "Tomorrow." Mary nestled into his embrace. "Tonight belongs to all those other dreams we helped deliver." As if on cue, fireworks burst over the city, the grand finale of another charity gala nearby. But for Mary and John, the colorful display celebrated something more personal, the newest addition to their recipe for happiness. Their love story had already changed Manhattan's social landscape, transformed the culinary world, and proven that passion knew no class boundaries. Now it would take on its greatest role yet, showing a new generation that life's sweetest moments come from daring to love beyond limits. The baby would arrive into a world their parents had helped reshape, where delivery workers could become master chefs, where CEOs could follow their hearts, and where every kitchen held the potential for magic. "Ready for this new adventure?" John asked softly. Mary's smile rivaled the fireworks. "As long as we're delivering it together." Hand in hand, they watched their city sparkle, knowing that their greatest creation yet was just beginning. After all, The best recipes were the ones that kept evolving, growing richer with each new ingredient life provided. And this newest addition promised to be the sweetest yet. Chapter 12. Love's Final Course. Moonlight silvered the copper pots in Serendipity's kitchen as Mary stood at her familiar workstation, hands moving with practiced grace over a special creation. The restaurant was closed for a private celebration, their first wedding anniversary, though the moment held another secret yet to be revealed. The kitchen, usually bustling with students and staff, now held only memories and possibilities. Each surface gleamed with the care of a space that had witnessed countless dreams taking flight. Through the windows, Manhattan's lights twinkled like stars brought down to earth, reminding her of that first stormy night when a simple delivery changed everything. "Something smells magical," John's voice carried through the quiet space. He appeared in the doorway, still in his chef's whites from teaching the evening's advanced class. Their ritual of hands-on instruction had surprised many who expected the CEO to delegate such tasks. But John had never forgotten his first love, the pure joy of creating with his hands. "Don't come closer," Mary warned playfully. "This is a surprise, like the surprise you've been carrying for the past 3 months. His eyes sparkled with knowing as they dropped to her slightly rounded belly, visible even under her chef's coat. Mary laughed softly. "You knew. Antoine told me this morning, said he could taste it in your latest sauce creation." John moved closer, despite her warning, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Something about the balance of flavors being distinctly maternal. That old matchmaker. Mary leaned back into his embrace. He's never wrong about these things. Never. John's hands settled protectively over their growing miracle. "Remember what he said the night we met? The right meal at the right moment can change lives forever." The oven timer chimed, and Mary pulled away to retrieve her creation. As she set the perfectly risen soufflé on the counter, John's breath caught. Written in chocolate across the delicate surface were the words, "Twins." "Mary." His voice cracked with emotion. "Look closer," she whispered. Nestled beside the soufflé sat 2 tiny chef's toques, each embroidered with a perfect miniature spatula. "Boy and girl," she said softly. "Double the blessings, double the dreams." John pulled her into a kiss that tasted of joy and possibility. When they parted, both had tears in their eyes. "I have something for you too," he said, reaching into his pocket. He produced an envelope bearing the William Enterprises logo. Mary opened it to find legal documents, the transfer of full ownership of Serendipity and all their culinary education centers into her name. "John, I can't—" "You already have," he interrupted gently. "Every student you've mentored, every life you've changed, every barrier you've broken, you've earned this 1,000 times over. I'm just making it official. But the board will be thrilled. Our culinary division's profits have tripled since you took charge. Turns out love is good business." Mary traced her fingers over the papers, remembering every step of their journey. "We've come so far from that first delivery. And we're just getting started." John's voice held excitement. "Wait until you see the plans for the children's cooking program I've been developing. Teaching kids from all backgrounds that food is love, creativity, possibility. Like the lessons we'll teach our own." Mary's hand found her belly again. A knock at the kitchen door interrupted them. Antoine entered, carrying a vintage bottle of sparkling cider. "Pour 3, non 4. He exclaimed, seeing the soufflé's announcement. His joy filled the kitchen like sunshine. "I felt it in my bones this morning. Double the magic." As they celebrated with their mentor, Mary looked around at the kingdom they'd built together. Not just restaurants and schools, but a revolution of the heart. A world where passion knew no boundaries, where love delivered the most unexpected gifts, and where every kitchen held the potential for miracles. To the future, John raised his glass. To family, Antoine added. To love, Mary finished, in all its perfect imperfection. The city hummed below them, a symphony of millions of stories intertwining. But here in their midnight kitchen, surrounded by copper pots and dreams come true, they had written their own unique chapter in the grand recipe book of life. And as their twins grew beneath her heart, Mary knew they would add their own special ingredients to this legacy of love, delivering new magic to a world that never stopped surprising those brave enough to believe in second chances and midnight deliveries. After all, the best stories, like the best recipes, were the ones that dared to break all the rules in pursuit of something extraordinary. And their love story? It was just the first course, the end.